Dr. Wade, guests, and honored former baseball players in the Negro League. It's my honor to introduce you our guest here, major guest here today, Dr. Harold E. Wade, a native of Huntsville, Alabama, was named the second president for Metro Atlanta College in November 1994. And he received his bachelor's degree in English from Stillman College in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and his master's degree in secondary education from the University of Alabama. And his PhD was awarded by in curriculum and foundations from the Ohio State University. Dr. Wade has spent most of his years in higher education in the accreditation arena. As Associate Executive Director of the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, he assisted hundreds of universities and colleges to achieve their accreditation-related goals. After serving as Executive Vice President of the Southern University System and Hampton University, located in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and Hampton, Virginia, respectively, Wade returned to Atlanta to assume his present position and duties as Chief Executive Officer of Atlanta Metro. He has also served as Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs in North Carolina's Fayetteville State University and Executive Assistant to the President at East Tennessee State University in Johnson City, Tennessee. In addition to his many roles in the higher education arena, Wade has been a coach, teacher, and professional baseball player with both the Minnesota Twins and the Boston Red Sox baseball organizations. Even though I don't know all the college university presidents, but I would say very few university of college presidents can boast that career. Dr. Wade has been active on many boards and commissions, including the National Committee on Educational Media and Materials for the Handicapped, the National Advisory Council for the Strengthening Developing Institutions Program, the editorial board of the Educational Forum, and the visiting panel on research of the Educational Testing Service. President Wade has been involved in the Race Relations Council of Central Atlanta Progress, the Stewart Avenue Redevelopment Plan, and the Renaissance Atlanta Task Group C. He recently served on the Advisory Council of the National Families in Action Club Hero Project. In addition, President Wade was honored at an Atlantans on the Move reception hosted by the 100 Black Men of Atlanta. Wade is married to the former Gwendolyn Body of Waverly Hall, Georgia. I give you Dr. Wade.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pye, Dr. Swafford. Sometimes it's not good for presidents to be on the move. I was honored for hopefully kind of different reasons by the 100 Black Men of Atlanta. It is a real pleasure for me to be here today, and a pleasure to see all of you out there. I think Ron Swafford hit it on the head. It's only appropriate that hot dogs be served for this occasion, because that's the fare that's usually, we've tasted a lot of them, haven't we guys, at ballparks. We can tell you all brands probably without knowing. So I think that's only appropriate. I think you're going to experience over the next several minutes a rare opportunity here to live and relive a very important part of American history, an often overlooked part of American history, I might add, but and that's been the case over the last 5 or 6 decades. It was only, as I recall, until the early 1990s that some interest was sparked or at least rekindled in the important history of those African-American Negro Baseball League players who were demonstrating their talents well before the color line was broken in the late 1940s by Jack Roosevelt Robinson. And we are lucky enough to have 2 of those people here today who were forerunners, very much a part of the contribution of those leagues, and I will introduce them more formally in a few minutes. But I want to first give you some perspective about the Negro Leagues. I know, just from looking at you out there, and I know the ages range from very young to almost my age, but many of you out there and many of people of my age don't know a whole lot about the Negro Baseball Leagues. So I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes to give you some perspective of the Negro Leagues and talk with you a little bit before we engage our more distinguished guests in some dialogue about their experiences in that league. The first black professional team was according to the history books that I've consulted with, was the Cuban Giants back as early as 1885. And the teams played largely on an independent basis for the first several years, and up until the first black league was formed in 1920. That year, Rube Foster, who has been credited as being the founder of or the father of the Negro Baseball League, and that year, 1920, was when Rube Foster undertook that effort. And 3 years later, a gentleman named Ed Bolden formed the Eastern Colored League. And these two leagues operated successfully for a number of years, but they fell victim to financial difficulties. And other black leagues also operated for a single season and were not able to continue on any kind of sound financial basis. So a lot of them started and stopped, but there were a lot of teams that had staying power. Eventually, two new leagues were organized. And one was the Negro National League, which was formed in 1933, and the Negro American League, which was chartered in 1937. And these two leagues thrived until the color line was broken, as I referred to earlier, by Branch Rickey's signing of Jackie Robinson in 1947. And as you might expect, there were mixed blessings with that. I mean, there was progress being made that the first Negro was being given a chance to compete along with white counterparts in the major leagues that was understood by everybody to be the major leagues at that time. But at the same time, the talent that was on display, such as the talent displayed by these gentlemen here today, started to see fans dwindle at the ballparks where they played, because many of them were flocking to see Jackie Robinson, even though they were sitting in a reserved section just like blacks sat in the balconies of movie theaters before they became desegregated. They were at the ballpark looking at the first black ball player, but couldn't sit alongside white fans. So they were sectioned in usually a special set of bleachers were put out there so that these black people who wanted to see the first black player play could do so. So in a way, that began, although it did a lot sociologically to change the social climate in this country, it spelled doom for a lot of people who had talent and a lot of people who were still able to display that talent but weren't given the same opportunity that Jackie Robinson was. There could not be a flurry of people going into that league. They had to very carefully pick the right person at the right time to make sure that there would be a good chance. And I'm told, and there's some credibility to this story, that there were others at that time who had much better talent than Jackie Robinson did, but they didn't have the combination of the talent and the ability, the educational background, the ability to be able to almost, in a biblical sense, turn the other cheek. And it took all of that for it to succeed, and Branch Rickey knew that. So in a way, it's just like a lot of other things. The demise of talent was experienced in the Negro Leagues, similar to what some of you will remember happened with the historically black colleges and universities when Division I schools started recruiting people of color. When you had Florida A&M in the Orange Blossom Classic playing against the champion in the Southwest Conference, Most of those players from Jackson State and FAMU went on to play in the National Football League. Now those teams have trouble competing against the teams that are fully desegregated at this point. So it's the same kind of phenomenon. There's progress, but then in a way there's a setback. But I think on balance, we would prefer not to turn back the clock, such as many other folks have. But that having been said, I think you kind of can appreciate the fact that by law, and the law was consistent with society's beliefs in America at that time, they were not going to allow any teams to compete that had one or more colored persons on it against the white teams that were in organized baseball at that time, and until, of course, Jackie Robinson broke the color line. But there are many, many other kinds of stories. I think probably that event did as much as almost anything short of the movement started by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to change the way this society interacts with each other on a racial basis. And there's been much improvement in that over the years, but as you well know from the controversy sparked even this year, it's still not over. And some of these deep-seated beliefs and hatred and bigotry still exist. It exists right here, right now, probably in this room. So we're not rid of it. It's certainly on my campus, and mine is a predominantly black campus. But we have to deal with that and deal openly about it and move on to try to make the best of it. With that said, let me just say that I would like to formally introduce now the gentlemen that are with us, and we'll talk more about the kinds of teams that were competing back then, where they were, what their names were. Many people heard about Satchel Paige, Josh Gibson, all these guys, Cool Papa Bell. Those guys are legendary. But as I recall, Satch himself and Josh Gibson said there were many more Satches and many more Joshes out there, and they could have been doing the same thing that they were doing. And these two gentlemen are probably among those that they were talking about. But I wanted to tell you a little bit about the gentlemen that are here today. One, of course, is James Red Moore, and I think you probably can take a guess at which one is James Red Moore up here. He and I had a chance to visit a little bit before we started today. But let me just tell you a little bit about, because he has a local significance to Red Moore here. His career spanned from 36 to 40. He played first base. The teams played on were the Chattanooga Choo-Choos and the Mohawk Giants, Atlanta Black Crackers, Newark Eagles, Indianapolis, ABCs, the Baltimore Elite Giants. And he batted left-handed, threw left-handed, and was born November 18, 1916, right here in Atlanta, Georgia. Had a very distinguished career as a first baseman, and as many did back at that time, he was a very, very slick fielding first baseman who was described at times as showboating. Although we wouldn't call it that when we saw it. We were just saying, we would have to remark to each other. They did a lot of that in warm-ups. He did a lot of it in games, and that's what people came out to see. The routine catches were just a thing that nobody really paid a lot of attention to. But some of the things that this gentleman did were described as showboating. But Red, I wanted to find out if you agreed with what was written about your being sort of a mediocre hitter or offensive player. Was that any truth to that you were sort of a Punch and Judy or?
Well, Dr. Wade, I wouldn't say that. See, people were more or less looking at my feeling, more or less. You understand? They weren't watching my hitting. I'd come up in crucial periods of time and knock in runs. I was a spray hitter per se. I got you. But I wasn't a home run hitter. But I batted up pretty first, fifth, and sixth in the batting order. I hit pretty good.
And you got the job done.
I did. And looking out, I played on team with Mule Sullis. He was playing first base when I went to Newark, and I guess they moved him back to outfield and put Red Moore on first.
Right.
So, he's in the Hall of Fame.
I got you.
Okay, well, Then West was playing first base for Baltimore Elite Giants, called him Shifty Jim, good first baseman. Well, when I went to Baltimore, well, they sent him to Philadelphia, Philly. Okay, I come back to Atlanta, come back home. They had a boy named Jim Kennedy playing first base there when Redmo came back there.
Right.
Redmo played first base. So you can put together what you want. Every team I played on, they didn't put nobody in my place. They put somebody else.
So it's fair to say that your fielding, your defensive work just overshadowed your offense.
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe Monty Irvin had something to do. I think I talked to him. He and I think Riley was
right
when he wrote that up. I said, man, you ought to be ashamed because my hand was hurt one time, my leg was hurt one time. He said that I was prone to injuries and all that kind of stuff. But nevertheless, I was there all the time while I was playing.
I got you. Let me just say a couple more things about Red before he tells you some more stories. And one of the things you'll find out about baseball players, they got stories, and they get embellished over the years. There's always a thread, an element of truth in there, but it just gets, it gets exaggerated as time goes by. I mean, there's nothing we see wrong with that. That's kind of understood in the fraternity. But he was, in 1938, when the Atlanta Black Crackers joined the Negro American League, he returned to his hometown as the regular first baseman for the Black Crackers and helped lead them to the second half league championship. And his contribution to that team's success did much for the city and didn't go unnoticed. And the fans here gave him a special day at Ponce de Leon Park, presenting the star first sacker with $350 worth of gifts and merchandise. At that time, that was a lot to spend on gifts and merchandise, and it said a lot about you, Red, I think.
That was more than I made in 2 months.
Is that right?
In money-wise, at that time.
And in 1939, the Black Crackers relocated to Indianapolis and played as the ABCs, but Moore soon signed with the Baltimore Elite Giants. And during his 2 years with the Elites, he roomed with the Hall of Famer Roy Campanella, whom many of you know from his playing days with the Brooklyn Dodgers, along with Jackie Robinson, Newcomb, and those guys. And I wanted to give you'll hear from Red a little bit more, and I'm sure he'll straighten us out about some of these other things that have been said about him in writing. But I wanted to introduce you to our other guest, and that is Larry Williams. Just to tell you what kind of ball player this guy is and how much of a fraternity we have. He hadn't seen me before in his life, to my knowledge. When we met earlier just about an hour ago or 30 minutes ago, he looked at me and he said, "You played either shortstop or third base." And he was right on the money. And that's all that he just was looking me up and down and said, "That's what you played." And that's exactly what I did. So I wanted to say that Larry, has an eye for at least what position you might have played based on how you look. And some of us can tell that. I maintained one time when we were in hotel lobbies of waiting to catch the bus to go to the ballpark or whatever, I could kind of look at even a visiting team that would be staying many times at the same hotel and pick out the left-handers. There's just something about the way left-handers carry themselves. And almost invariably, I was right. But that's the same kind of thing I think that Larry has done over here. Our background and biography on Larry is not quite as extensive as it is on Red, but we do know that he was a sensational center fielder for the Kansas City Monarchs, and that he was blessed with a good arm and great speed, and had a good eye for fielding and hitting. And he was Buck O'Neill's leadoff hitter in the early 50s, as I'm recalling here. And you're going to hear more good things about both Larry and Red, and I'm going to ask them to share some of their experiences with you here today, and we'll have an opportunity for you to ask questions of them and me and anybody else in here you want to. But Red, why don't we start with you and just, if you would, just talk about a couple of your most memorable experiences in the Negro Baseball League, and I think at Larry too, it might be good if some of the things that are not well known, such as some of the fun you had, because even in the most difficult of times, there was fun to be had. I know that. And some of those things are not well known, even after we've started to show some interest in the Negro Leagues. But I hope you'll share some of that. We know a lot about the separate facilities, the long bus rides, playing 2 or 3 cities a day and all that kind of stuff. But there are some things probably that some of the people here haven't heard about that I'd like for you to at least give them some insights into, because you lived it. Yes. And that's what we really want to hear from you about.
Well, first, I would like to begin I was, as has been stated, I was born and raised here in Atlanta, and I went to Washington High School. At that time, we didn't have one high school here, and started playing baseball locally around Atlanta, playing with little local teams around Atlanta. Had 3 or 4 different teams. The Atlanta Braves. We had a team here called the Atlanta Braves in Atlanta prior to the Atlanta Braves coming here. We had another team called the Atlanta Braves, Atlanta All-Stars, and Oakland City Cubs. That's a multiplicity of local teams. And the way we got to play on the major teams in the league, as we couldn't play we couldn't play in the in the National League, in fact, because of segregation and everything. So when I was young, and after learning about, they had the Negro National League team and Negro American League team, so my objective was to try to get as high as I could go, and that would play with them, you understand. So I was fortunate enough to be seen by some people, as we didn't have, I think Dr. Wade alluded to, we didn't have all these facilities now, like the different coaches and different training sessions and people to teach us building weights and all. We just born with natural abilities. And we played for the love of the game, you understand, as it was said. We didn't make any money, but we were what you call the trailblazers, or the catalysts, pioneers for all these our black ball players who were making X amount of dollars now, these millions and millions. We were the one who opened the door, and as Dr. Wade has stated, there were a lot of players that was on the same level above Jackie in playing status, you understand. We had a lot of good ball players, but because of the cultural background, they couldn't hardly play like Jackie. They took all the taunts and black cats on the field, and all those negative things were said, because we had some fellas that wasn't as educated as Jackie was, and they were, some of them had knives in the pocket, and put the black cat on the field, you might kill the black cat, cut the put him out there. So, so therefore, as Dr. Wade said, it was really, Branch Rickey picked, I believe, in fact, is an article that was written in one of the sports writers about 10 or 11 years ago, roughly about 13 years ago now. You asked me concerning, did I have any arrests? It was angry because I didn't make it into the majors or anything, and was angry because Jackie Robinson was picked. I told him no. I say I believe that we would eventually play in the majors because I was playing, and I was fortunate enough to play against Major League Baseball players in California back in the 40s, in 1940, and we were able to beat them like they would beat us. And so by playing them, the commissioner at that time, Commissioner Landis, Kennesaw Mountain Landis, he was the commissioner at that time, he stopped them from playing the black Negro players. Because the public was observing it too, you understand, and they were wondering, why aren't we, we're good enough, we beat them, why can't we play with them? But because of the color of our skins, you understand, they wouldn't allow us to. And so that was one of the greatest things that ever happened to me, was because I thought at one time that the white ball player was superior to us until playing against them, you understand. And then after playing against them, we saw we all was human beings, you understand. We all could beat them and they could beat us. And so it was seen why that the commissioner didn't want us to to play, you understand. But eventually, it was segregation was moved and integration moved in after Jackie Robinson broke the ice and so forth. And I got to talking when I was random. I just went to talking. Now, Dr. Wade, anything specific you want me to talk about?
Well, I hope you and Larry both will share with us some of the things that probably you remember best as stories that, for example, a story about Satch telling all the people, the outfielders, sit down.
Well, I've seen
and
that.
I'll strike out the side, or tell them to leave the field, and he proceeds to strike out the side. I mean, some of us have heard those stories, but I'm sure there are some others like that.
Yes, but I've seen Satch. I mean, I was fortunate enough to play with Satch when he was playing in the Negro National League. In the Negro National League, we had roughly 7 teams when I first went there. You had the New York Cubans, the New York Black Yankees, the Newark Eagles, Philadelphia Stars, Baltimore Elite Giants, Homestead Grays, and the Pittsburgh Crawfords. And so I'd seen Joyce and Satch get together, and they were playing. I'll never forget, over in East Orange in Newark, back in '37 when I was in Newark, and they were playing a team. We were off that day, and I went to the game, and Satch walked 3 men intentionally and struck out the side. I've seen that actually happen. People have heard about it, but I was looking at it with my own eyes.
That's right.
And as it has been stated about some more players was as good as Jackie. Everyone thought because of Satchel, Page, and Joyce Gibson's reputation as battery mason, they were so good, you understand. We were under the impression that they would have been the first 2 black ball players who would have made the teams, the major league teams. We believe they would have been the first one picked. But as it has been stated, Frank Rickey picked the right person, I believe personally myself, because of his intelligence, his cultural background, and so forth. He had played sports with White, and he was very much in tune of how to act, you understand.
Yeah, at UCLA as a football player.
Oh, yeah, he's a four-letter man.
Yeah. Larry, how about you? Why don't you share a little bit of your experience?
Right. Okay, I'm originally from LaGrange, Georgia, and right after I graduated from high school, I went to Michigan, Ypsilanti. And I think my biggest thrill was that there was an old guy. I was playing a little recreation ball around the city of Ypsilanti. That's near Ann Arbor, where the University of Michigan's at.
Right.
There was an older guy that used to go out, and he used to follow the Negro League. And he watched us play, and he saw some talent out there, some of us guys. So he asked about 3 of us if we would like to play in the Negro League with some of the teams, which were only 4 teams left at that time. So I got in towards the tail end of it. The league was just about to fold when I got there. So this guy, he asked us if we want to go down to Toledo. He said, the Monarchs are going to be down there, and I'll take you down. He said, I know Buck O'Neill, and he said, maybe you might get a chance to stick on and play with a team there. He said, give it a chance. So I did. We went down to Toledo, 1955, me and 3 other guys. We went down, and right away, Buck O'Neill wouldn't start any of us. About the 5th inning, Buck decided, well, I'll give this kid a chance here. So he put me in to play. So I went to center field. We was playing the Memphis Red Sox. And I'll never forget, there was a man on first base, 1 out. The next batter hit one to right center field. I mean, he hit a nice shot, gap shot. I didn't have any idea that I would catch that ball. I took off, Like I had a knack of getting a good jump on the ball. I got a good jump on the ball, took off, and I snared the ball right at the fence. In the meantime, the guy that was on first base, he didn't think that I would catch that ball either, so he was around in second on his way to third after I caught it. I caught the ball, flipped it into the cutoff man. He flipped it to first base, double play, so we get out of it. And from there, that's when Buck O'Neill decided, well, okay, you can come along with us. I'll give you a shot. So that was a big thrill for me.
I can imagine. You know, I mentioned something about the fun I know you guys must have had. I was in a position where I could touch some of the people that probably you might even know. There were a couple of guys in my hometown, one named Willie Gaines and the other named Red Barnes, Red, pitcher. These guys played in the Negro League back when I was a kid, and I played with them some and went on at least one trip with them when I was about 14 years old. They put me on the bus, and I went and played with them down in Mississippi somewhere. I remember there was a guy down there who I remember a lot of things, and one guy felt I might remember too much, so he took it upon himself to shield me. So when the ball players after the game, he took me on the bus and just sat with me. And but they had all kinds of food. I need not tell you they had all kinds of libations out there, barbecue, whatever. But you're talking about fun. These guys were having fun, and what I remember best about that is that these guys were thoughtful enough to try to at least keep somebody who might not be ready for what I was going to see from seeing some of the things that were going to happen. I don't know what happened. I probably don't care to know. But I do remember some of those days like that, and some of the fun I had playing with teams like the Holt Rockets, which was a foundry team where they would hire people. They would pretend to give them jobs, but it was just an excuse to pay them to play baseball. And I played on one of those kind of teams, too, when I was very young. So I experienced a little bit of that life, and I tell you, I heard a lot of stories. And I just, those are the kinds of things that I think some of us, even I, would not have any idea what kind of fun you guys had, and in spite of all the odds you were up against. And so can you talk a little bit about some of those? Some of the most memorable fun times you had, you know, with your players or at outings like that in ballparks that you played in and so forth.
Well, I would say, well, usually when we're playing on Sundays and everything, we would have a lot of after games and everything. We would get together, and you know, you meet sometimes you meet some people who want to go to church, and then you meet some people who want to do some balling sometimes. So you just do what they want to do. But me, when I was playing, my fun when I didn't get most of it the games. I was mostly a loner when I was in town or something of that nature. I didn't hang out much. I would find like some people that I like to be around, and they like to be around me, and we share our time together more or less. And so I wasn't like the rest of the fellas, because see, as had been stated, when we were playing, you know, we played most of the fun, because we didn't make too much money, you understand, but we made more than the average person. But you know, wasn't no big bucks. We baseball players, they were very well thought of, and people really, in fact, they looked up to baseball players when we was coming along. We were very well thought of, you understand, and so that, and I just the fun that I had more or less was mostly wasn't a whole lot of this other getting together. I had a lot of fun out playing on the baseball field, as it has been stated, showing, you know, doing trick catches in front of people. I put on the show for the game and everything. People come out and see me catch the ball behind my back, between my legs, things like that. I used to do a lot of trick catches and things of that nature and everything. People would like to, you know, see me do things like that. And for me to be started to play, I started young, and I was able to, as it has been stated, I was able to, everywhere I went, I mean, I was the man to play first base. So evidently I was pretty good at that position, and so I got a lot of fame and publicity and stuff like that and everything. And so I just had a wonderful time playing. That's all. And I mean, this other, I hear a lot of players talk about a lot of things that they didn't have. I mean, with the teams that I played for, they paid what they said they were going to pay. I paid for 3 teams, played for 3 teams while I was playing in the Negro Leagues, and each one of the owners that I played for, they paid it. They paid the monies that they said they were going to pay. You understand? And as a drawing card, I was more or less a drawing card for teams. You understand? Because people would come out to see me, as Dr. Wade said, clown and put on a show. They come out before game time, and sometime in the games I'd catch the ball behind my back and things like that. You know, I wouldn't do it when the game was close, but you know, we'd have to have a lead or something like that, and then making it, you know, sometime to double play, and I made 2 or 3. I've been involved in about 3 triple plays. You understand? In my baseball career, all of that was, you know, something that was kind of outstanding to me. You understand? In my playing.
That's good.
And in my travel, you understand? One thing, we got a chance to get around and travel a lot, and see the world and everything.
Yeah. Larry?
Just listening to what Red said about catching the ball behind his back. I can remember back in LaGrange when I was a boy, like I was a teenager, like 15, 16 years old. And I think Red was playing with the Atlanta Braves at that time, I believe. And all of the kids used to say, we'd find out that the Braves was going to come down and play. And I said, well, hey, man, let's go. I said, oh, Red Moore's going to be here. I said, man, he catches the ball behind his back, and all of us, you know, we would, there was a fence there. We used to sneak up in the woods there and jump the fence so we could watch his ball game, because none of us had the money to get into the game, you know. So we had a lot of fun there. And like Dr. Wade was asking about the fun, I used to go dance pretty well. And I remember, and I believe it's Nashville, where Fisk University.
Yeah, Fisk.
Okay, that's Nashville. I remember there was a group of entertainers following us around. They were going different places that we just happened to be at some of the same hotels together. I remember in Nashville, they had a bus touring the South with these entertainers. Like they had Arthur Prysock, Sarah Vaughan, Al Hibbler, somebody, and Nappy Brown. They had so many old-time entertainers there, and we went to Chicago, and we was at the Persian Hotel. This hotel in Chicago was mostly for all blacks. You know, blacks had to go there because of segregation. You couldn't get into any other hotel, so the name of it was the Persian Hotel. So my buddy and I, we both liked to dance a lot, so we found out where these entertainers was going to be. So we went out to do a little dancing there, and they had Ruth Brown on too. She was there, and boy, we got out and we done some. There was a dance they called the chicken, the funky chicken. We used to do that funky chicken thing, and that was a lot of fun there. We enjoyed that stuff, but at my age now, I could have. So
why don't we throw it open to the audience here and get some questions from you of any of the players here. I think it's these guys would laugh at the players talking about jet lag now. You know, with the way they used to have to travel and the way they slept and so forth. And I can tell you, it's a little bit. It's not an experience a lot of folks have, to be paid for something you would do for nothing. That's exactly what these guys did, and that's exactly what I had an opportunity to experience for some years. Seven altogether in the minor leagues that I played. But had it not been for these kinds of guys, I probably would not have had the opportunity I had, even as late as I had it. And one of the things that was most sobering for me that I found out, and I never would have suspected it, is that in a poll taken about a year or two ago of active Major League black baseball players, a significant number of them didn't even know who Jackie Robinson was. And that really floored me. It's hard to imagine anybody making a living at that level having no understanding, appreciation, or knowledge of the contribution that Jackie Robinson made to this society, but especially to baseball in this country. So why don't I saw a hand here? Yes, sir.
During the time of integration and the demise of the Negro League, do any of you gentlemen know whether there was an attempt made by any of the owners to get a franchise from those various teams into either the American or the National League?
I never did hear any attempt to do that. After the demise, all of our baseball players, they migrated, they left. They went to Canada and Mexico and Dominican and played overseas. And after they started picking the better ball players for the other teams, the American and the National League, picked them up, put them on farm teams. And so I never, I don't know whether...
those teams could have competed.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, they could
no
have.
No question about it.
But did nobody take that time to do that, you understand, to invest their money to do it?
There's a question over here. Yes.
Was there an elite team, like a lot of players have always said that they really, if anything in their careers, they would love to play for the Yankees. Was there an elite black baseball team that you got a shot to play for them? I've heard the Kansas City Monarchs. I know they were a elite team, but I don't know if it's because of Buckley and Hill as time's gone along. But was there a team like that anybody with one opportunity to play for?
Well, I think myself personally, due to the fact that Branch Rickey made it possible for Jackie Robinson to play for the Dodgers was the team that I think I would have liked to have played for.
I think he's asking, though, Larry, about a team in the Negro League that would be considered like the Dodgers or the Yankees as teams that a lot of players would like to play for. Which one of those, the Monarchs or Crawfords or Giants or whatever?
Where you would get where it was like you had a shot at walking away with a championship ring. Most players, when they play for the Yankees, they feel like, well, if I get there, I'm going to come.
Oh, okay, I got you. I think that a lot of guys would choose the Monarchs because of so many black players doing segregation made it from the Monarchs. I think if you look back into history of your black Negro League teams, that you will find that more black players were picked from the Monarchs than any other of the black teams.
No, I'm going to have to go with the East team using you're at West with the American League team. I was in the National League. The Homestead Grays now, when they were playing, the Homestead Grays was a team that more people would like to play on in the East, you understand. Now, Kansas City was in the West, but when they tied with the Homestead Grays would usually be victorious, you understand. So
well, the competition
I guess I'll have to agree with Red because I can't go that far back.
Well, back then in the 30s and the 40s when they really had a burn. See, when the Crawfords disbanded and got Satch, Joyce, Buck, and all that bunch together, Cool Papa Bell, all those great ball players, everything, they had a burner, and they won the championship in the East. Roughly around 9 or 10 straight years. They were just like the Yankees, you understand. In the black leagues, they were just like the Yankees over in the American League.
I know everybody out there probably knows that we've been joined by President Belcher. I'm on her campus now, and I'm welcoming her. Hi, Jackie. Well, this has been a fun time for me, and Larry and Red. Dr. Belcher here is the president of Georgia Perimeter College, and there are about, what, 5 campuses now in that system? Yeah, this is one of the just one of the campuses. But welcome, Dr. Belcher, and you came at a good time. We almost got a little competition going here as to which team would have been the preferred team. I think that's a good question. That's one I was waiting anxiously to hear the answer to. Any other questions out there, Ron? I think, and then yeah, okay.
I was going to ask Brandon, did you ever consider going to South America to play?
No, I never did, because when I came out of service in 1945. Prior to that, I never did. I was playing all right in the States, you understand. I was doing pretty good in the States with Newark and Baltimore. But after I came out of service, I was the prop of the Black Yankees. They had, while I was in service, they traded Washington, a boy named Washington, to play first base for Baltimore, and I was supposed to have gone to the New York Black Yankees in 45 after I came out of service in 46 to begin the season in 46. But Selma, the owner of the Black Yankees, wouldn't give me. I wanted X amount of dollars because I had married in 1941, and when I went into service, I was married, so I needed some money to kind of, leave with my wife. At that time, didn't have nothing to say or nothing like that. It kind of tied me over while in, spring training or something like that. And so Selma wouldn't agree to give me what I wanted for him to leave with my wife. So I just stayed and played weekend baseball then up until Jackie Robinson, if you recall how Branch-Rickey got him in 40, or sent him to Montreal in 46, and then in 47 he came to Brooklyn, you understand, and went to playing with the Brooklyns. And then in 48, the teams went to, as the doctor has said, they went to downsizing and winning off because the other owners weren't afraid then to take a chance with black ball players, and so this phased out the black ball players, as Larry said when he started playing. See, when 14 was playing, but when I was playing, they started out with 7. We had 7 and then 6 up until the 19 and 48. That's when I stopped. They had 6 then. But when he started, they didn't have it 4. He started behind that, you understand? So, no, I never did think about going to South America.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Schwarber?
I heard a story that Coop Papa Bell was so fast that he could turn the light off and get in bed before the light went out.
Everybody did.
You played
yes, sure. He was fast, Doctor. He was fast. He was really fast. Now you couldn't. On slow rolls in the infield, and you understand, he can nearly about take 2 bases on a slow ball. but that was just, you know what I mean. That's kind of exaggerating a little bit on that one.
I got a little fable here that at the opening of the museum in Kansas City in 1997, Lou Brock told a story of Cool Papa. He was saying that Cool Papa, everybody tell the story that you just asked a question about, and Red took care of it for you. Lou Brock said that Cool Papa was so fast until the guy, Cool Papa, was on first base. The guy behind Cool Papa bunted the ball to third base. Third baseman picked the ball up and accidentally tagged the guy out at third base, tried to get the ball to first base. And he was so I thought that was a real tough one there. Yeah, that's really fast. That's some speed there. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
My question is, was baseball always a childhood dream of yours? And if so, what inspired you to hold on to that dream? Who or what inspired you to hold on to that dream?
When we were coming along, see, I'm 83 now, so it wasn't too much for us to get in with children back there. We could play little baseball, basketball around when we were small and shoot marbles and things like that. And after I was old enough to know that I couldn't play in the as a segregated, at the time I come along with segregation and everything, I couldn't play with the white teams and everything. And after I found out that we had some 2 black teams in the league, the Negro National League and Negro American League, after I found that was my ambition was to be good enough to play on one of those teams, and I was very elated when they picked me out to. I was playing an All-Star game back in 1935 in Jacksonville, Florida, when Miss Manning, who was the owner of the Newark Eagles at that time, she saw me playing, and at that time, that's when she asked me, did I want to play with her? I told her, sure. At that time, we signed contracts per se, but they wasn't binding per se. But you would sign them, and they would pay the monies that they would offer you. But when the season was over, if another team would offer you more money, it wasn't like it is now. You just take the most money, because you very seldom would jump a team in the middle of the stream, you understand. Once you sign one, you would always probably stay with them the whole year. So anyway, that's the way I got to start playing with her, you understand, with her team. And that was my ambition. I was very, very overjoyed when I and then they had, as I was saying, that they had Muse Suggs playing first base, and when I went and they put Muse Suggs in the outfield, I still never felt happy about that. That's why I want to say, I want to talk to Money about it. See, when Money comes there, I was there before Money was, see?
You displaced the legend.
Yeah, I displaced the legend there, so, and everything. I'm really happy about that.
What about you, Larry?
Well, I was just thinking of segregation and what it was like, and it was unfortunate that it had to be this way, but I think if you really think about it, it wasn't the right thing, but it helped make the black players work a little harder for what they had to do. We knew that we had to play twice as hard, or we had to be twice as good as the white ball players in order to make it. And I think right there, that really inspired a lot of black players to really fight and get out there and try to do good at it.
It was a childhood dream of mine. Jackie Robinson was my idol when I was coming up, as I'm sure most of my peers. And I don't think it was so much because Jackie Robinson. It may have been, maybe because he was black, because the only thing I could be if I were going to play big league ball was be a black ball player. I couldn't change that. No. I knew I wanted to do that for a living. And I felt very good after finishing college and signing a pro contract. I was offered to sign a contract my sophomore year in college and turned it down. I was my own agent. I demanded enough money to finish college, and the Phillies offered to sign me at my sophomore year. And when they didn't come forward with enough money for me to make sure I could make a living and also finish college, paying my way because I was on scholarship, I waited and got signed after I finished college. And the people that I negotiated with for my first contract, who happened to be with the Minnesota Twins, thought that I had an agent because I refused to sign. I held out, wanting very desperately to play. But I said, no, I've got to have enough money to justify devoting this kind of time to this, because I got something to fall back on. So it was, and after I played a few years, and it was different, though, when you were playing it for fun. When you have to play every day, whether you want to or not, whether you're hurt or not, it's a job. And it took me not even a year to realize that it was a job. I enjoyed it less after I was making the money than I did before. And I promise you, since I've been out of it, it's hard for me to watch baseball. It's not a good spectator sport to me. I don't go to baseball games. I'll only watch it if it's a playoffs or lots on the line, or I know somebody. Almost all the guys I play with are out of it now. But Yeah, it was a dream of mine, but and I'm glad I had the opportunity. I'm glad I saw it close enough to realize what it was, and don't regret it at all. It was a good experience. It was a lot like an Army experience for me, which I didn't have, and baseball kept me from having that. The Red Sox kept me out of the Army is what happened. Yeah, Ron?
A couple of questions, if I may. I've read somewhere that when Josh Gibson hit a home run, it didn't sound like other home runs. I just wondered if there's any truth to that. And the other question, was Satchel Paige a power pitcher, a finesse pitcher, or both? And is there anybody like him in modern baseball?
Well, I could tell you something about Satch because he was a finesse and he was an overpowering pitcher. He had good control. He had really good control, and he could just pinpoint where he threw the ball, and he could throw so hard till you couldn't dig in on him. You understand? You had to stay loose up there because he laid down. You understand? So, Doctor, I say he was a finesse and a power pitcher. I batted against him and seen him pitch, and he really had pinpoint control. He could just about throw the ball where he wanted to throw it.
Do you happen to know how old he was?
No, we didn't never know how old he was. We didn't never.
I'm not sure he knew, right?
No, it's just an assumption. I really don't know. I never did know. I knew when I went up there, I was 18 years old, going on 19 back in 36. And he was playing then. I don't know how old he was, but I was thinking if he could have started in the major league, he finally, went to Cleveland so he was the oldest rookie that ever made the, oldest rookie, you understand. I was just wondering if he could have started like Bob Feller if he was 16 or 17 years old and gotten a chance, what type of records he would have set. Because he was just as good as they say he was, or better. And Josh Gibson, that hurt him, when Jackie Robinson was picked because he wasn't picked, and because he started drinking and he started dissipating, and he just, he didn't live long enough to see Jackie. He died just before Jackie was played his first game. Yes, he did. Mm-hmm. And while I'm talking, I'd like to let me say this. While I'm saying, because this, Ken Bowens, who authored the nine inning, I guess all you've seen that baseball where you had a documentary of baseball. I was at a dinner that he had back in 1994. It was just three of us, three black ball players, Max Manning and Frazier, another black ball player, and his wife. And the only other black people there was people who were waiting on us. All the rest of them, we was in Connecticut, some part of Connecticut anyway. But he made a statement, and it really was great about Jackie. He said that he believed that Jackie died from stress, more or less. He think that caused his sickness, because Jackie Robinson was white-headed. Now he was roughly around 55 years old when he died. He was a young man, but he wasn't bald-headed or nothing like that. He was white-headed, and he said he believed that the stress, because of what he had gone through in the baseball during his years of baseball, caused that to happen to him, because he had to take a lot, as Dr. Wade has stated, because he said not only the black minority, he had all of the minorities on his shoulders when he was, opening the door for it.
And for some of you who may not realize, he really only had to keep his head cool for a year.
That's right.
And once that period expired, the true Jackie Robinson started to show.
That's right.
He was very aggressive.
Yes.
Took no stuff off anybody, mm-hmm. And so he was not. But somebody you might remember who's still around now, also named Robinson, Frank Robinson. Mm-hmm. All the talent in the world, but Frank wouldn't have lasted in Jackie's role 2 days. Mm-hmm. No, because Frank was noted as a manager of having an open door policy, but nobody ever used it.
Well, Dr. Wade, just speaking of Jackie being aggressive, after he had finished his rollout as getting black players into the majors, I remember a story that Buck O'Neill had written in his book of I was right on time. I don't know whether any of you have heard of that book or seen it, but if you haven't, you should get out and get it. There's some real good history on it. And speaking of Jackie, there was a gas station somewhere in Oklahoma that they used to fill up the bus there. And they took the bus, and the guy asked them to fill it up. The driver of the bus asked the guy to fill it up. He put the hose in the tank, and some of the guys wanted to use the bathroom. The guy wouldn't allow them to use the bathroom. So Jackie spoke up and said, "Hey, if we can't use the bathroom, take that pump out. We're not going to buy gas." So
exactly.
He left. He was.
Exactly. And you know, it's kind of ironic, but you know, they say the more things change, the more they remain the same. Mm-hmm. Even in the late '60s, when I was playing professional ball, I played in Tennessee, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Iowa, New York, Pennsylvania, all of those states. And I named the southern states because nowhere in any ballpark in any southern state did I hear a derogatory term aimed at me. But in Wisconsin Rapids, Wisconsin, I was called Bosco when I appeared at the plate. And I was in towns such as Wellsville, New York, which is in western New York, where not only was I the only black player on the team, I was the only black person in the town. And until my wife came, and that made two of us. That's when I had to learn how to cut my own hair and do things like that. So that was quite an experience. But it just shows you that you never know where you're going to hear some of these vestiges of racism. That's right. And some of the demeaning kinds of things. I never heard it in any ballpark in any of the southern states that I named. It was in liberal Wisconsin that I was called Bosco. And maybe some of you don't know what Bosco is. It was a chocolate drink, remember? Yeah. I forget there's a generation gap here. Yeah.
I may be wrong on this, so don't correct me, but what about was there a second black ball player who played for the Indians called Larry Doby?
Larry Doby.
Yeah. What about him? Because he came along fairly quietly behind Boston, and gentlemen, I can't remember your name. When you said the thing about the Dodgers, it sprung something on me too. Which teams at that time really impressed you that they really wanted black ball players? I get the impression just from what you said in my earlier question that it seems like the Dodgers and the Indians were two clubs that were saying, hey, we're going this direction, whereas everybody else was sitting back. The other question I want to ask, which I've got to ask you, is how seriously do you think white ball players wanted black ball players? Like you said, it seems like wherever you would have gone, somebody wouldn't have had a job. And I'm wondering how bad they really want y'all playing at that time. Sincerely.
Well, I think there was a lot of fear in white players. I don't think they really wanted black ball players to come into the majors because, like you say, they knew that some of them was going to lose out on the jobs. And for that reason, I think they didn't want black ball players in.
I was told by a reliable source that they were told not to have an X amount of ball players on the team regardless of how good they could play. Yeah. You understand? They would limit them to 1, 2, or 3, not more than 3 at certain times. I mean, when they first started, they weren't supposed to have so many. Regardless of how good they can play, that's all you have. That was ultimatum.
And I think I would be remiss if I didn't share with you one of the stories that I know some of you heard about what happened with Jackie Robinson when he was on that team suffering all the abuse. It took a white boy from Louisville, Kentucky, to go up and put his arms around him to change a whole lot of the attitudes of bigots who were not only on in the park but on the team. And that took a lot to do. That took a lot. I've lived in Louisville, Kentucky twice in my life. And I can tell you, for somebody who is born Harold Pee Wee Reese in Louisville, Kentucky, to do that, it is a remarkable thing for a human being to do. And it showed great humanitarianism. And I don't think, I know Rachel Robinson never forgot it. and continued to thank him even at his funeral for that gesture, because it changed the way people looked at baseball and human beings, I think. Yes, sir.
You mentioned earlier about Major League Baseball players today and how, unfortunately, they don't really understand what Jack Robinson did or even know who he is. If you guys had a few minutes to sit down with a major leaguer, black player or a non-white player, and kind of explain to them the importance of Jackie Robinson, is there a story you would tell them, or how would you go about getting them to understand how very important he was? Yes.
Any of you guys want to handle that? Because that'd be tough for me. I promise you, that'd be really tough. Because I really almost don't blame them as much as I do the people who raised them. And taught them. I can't, it's just unimaginable for me for that to happen, especially doing what they do for a living. It almost, you just wouldn't think that would be possible. At least I didn't. And I don't know where I'd begin. I don't know how they, with the people who might have been confronted about not knowing that, how they may have explained that, or even how, if they were indifferent or cavalier about it, I don't know. But it just strikes me as being, I can understand with history being written the way it has been and spoken about the way it has been, how you could miss some of that. But there's almost no good reason to miss that in these ball players' lifetimes. None whatsoever. And I think you have an obligation to understand where you came from. And I think that's a critical part of it. Whether you're an athlete or not, I think you need to know about that, because I think it did as much for the rest of society as it did for baseball, maybe more.
As Dr. Williams was talking, I was thinking, as I'm much older than all of you here, just about
a couple of years, anyway.
Yeah, more or less. I would have to, since I was here when it started way back, so I didn't have much chance to get, because when it started to integrate, and I was just about 30 years old, and just about old enough to come out of baseball or either be a good baseball player, but I just put it down more or less. But going back, I would have to relate to what it was, because being born in the South and everything, I was more or less used, was used, because I thought that was what was supposed to have happened. But these younger people who have come up since I have, in the latter years, I say latter 40 years, or later, they would have a different ideas and what have you. But I would have to relate to get them and let them know what we had to do to open the door for these $1 million people now who don't even want to sign autographs for people, They don't even want to stay out the people who pay their salary. They don't want to, give them no kind of time and everything. I just don't see how they can be so selfish. So I'd have to tell them, I'd get out and talk with them. I say, you blessed,
Out of everything that's said about that, I would like to say one thing. And that's things are not what they should be, but I thank God that it's not what it used to be. So if we can just continue to maybe try to understand each other more, then maybe we'll come to the end of the road where that we'll meet and things will work out the way they should. And I'm looking forward and hoping that this will happen someday.
Well said, Larry. Why don't we at this time first give these two gentlemen a hand for their contribution.